Alright, you guys, welcome to Warhammer Stuff. So today we have Harlequins of the Twilight Sadath and Gene Stealer cults of the Helix Twisted Cult. So let's go ahead and check out the armies.
Alright, so for today I am bringing 2,000 points, or 1,993 points, of Gene Stealer cults from the Twisted Helix. I have 2 CP left over, and this is a battalion. So first, my Warlord is the Patriarch. Now, he has been given a Warlord trait and a Relic. And so he has the Warlord trait, or the Relic Elixir of Prime Specimen, which, if there's a Biophagus, I get to give him 2 abilities of my choice. And so basically he has Exploding Sixes and Feel No Pain, 5-up Feel No Pain. He has a Psychic Familiar. His Warlord trait is Preternatural Speed, so he has Always Fight First, and he can reroll the hit roll, which means with his weapon he has reroll to hit and wound, Exploding Sixes, and a 5-up Feel No Pain after his 4-up Invulnerable save. And he can advance in a turn in which he charges, just cause. And every cult unit nearby can ignore all modifiers near him. Alright, and apart from that, his Psychic powers is obviously Smite, and this is a thing with the Gene Stealer cults, is that every Psyker automatically has the, their cult Psychic power. So he has Mutagenic Deviation automatically, which is just Exploding Six, not Exploding Sixes, 6 auto wound. Then he has, basically, he's a offensive caster, Psionic Blast, Mental Onslaught. These are basically just spells that do mortal wounds, so he is just going to hit hard as much as often. He's just a combat monkey. Then we have our Magus, who has a Relic as well, which is, what is it? It's a Psychic Familiar, which is upgraded to the Relic the Crouchling, which basically, once per Psychic phase, I can reroll 1 Psychic test for the model. And if all the dice were the same, the Psychic power cannot be denied. So doubles will be very good. And essentially, the idea of her is to be a buffer, because for 1 CP, I can give, she can target anyone on the board that's friendly. So she has Might from Beyond and Psychic Stimulus, along with Mutagenic Deviation, which is auto take. So she basically can make a unit eligible to shoot or charge in a turn in which it advanced or fell back, and they don't suffer penalties for firing assault weapons the same turn in which they advanced. Then Might from Beyond, which is everyone gets +1 attack, so pretty useful. And then we have these guys. So Biophagus, he is there to do absolutely nothing except allow me to have buffs. So because of his mere existence, he gave the Warlord some buffs. Apart from that, he has absolutely no use to me. Maybe he can stay back and hold objectives if he doesn't die. But apart from that, he has nothing. The way this army is built, he's not going to be able to use his genomic enhancement because there's not really going to be any infantry near him. Nexos, I brought him because, well, he can automatically put a, a crossfire marker on any enemy unit in the command phase. So that's very important to turn my 4-ups to hit into 3-ups to hit. So 50 points for that. I'd give him the Relic Cranial Inlay because I was thinking, like, he can at least, at best, give me 10 CP in this game back as a return. So basically how it works is every time I use a stratagem on a 5-up, that command point is refunded. Now, here's the thing. The issue is that, according to the rules, I can only regenerate 1 command point per turn. So he's going to be capped at 1 per turn. So I can't, like, magically roll non-stop 5-ups, apparently. Thanks to a comment who pointed that out. So I thought, in the end, I spend 1 CP in a Relic to potentially save 10. So we'll see how that goes. Alright, then on to troops. So this is going to be relatively simple. So 2 units of Acolytes. These guys all have hand flamers. That's it. And they will each be in their own truck. Blue with blue, green with green. And the red is a unit of Neophyte Hybrids. These guys all have shotguns, except for the ones that don't. They have seismic cannons. There's 2 seismic cannons and 2 flamers. And essentially, this squad is going to be in the red truck. And so they're all going to be driving around, shooting everything to death. And then finally, I have this unit of Neophyte Hybrids. This one is a bigger deal. They have the ability Lying in Wait, which means they can be set up anywhere 3 inches away from enemy models. They have 4 seismic cannons, 4 flamers, and everyone else has shotguns, which is pretty strong. And they also have a genomic enhancement from the from the biophages. With Twisted Helix, I was able to select the ability. So these guys all have a 5-up Feel No Pain. So we will see how that goes. Looking forward to seeing how well they do. Either they're going to do absolutely nothing, or they're going to do something. And then we have on to elites.
Nothing.
Yeah. So we have 3 units of Gene Stealers, 2 units of 6, because that's the max that a Rock Grinder can have, and 1 unit of 10. The 1 unit of 10 will be very interesting because they have the ability They Came From Below, which is basically they're going to get a free move on the battlefield. So they can make a normal move as if it was my movement phase, but must end more than 9 inches away from enemy models. However, if I don't go first, I have the choice of removing them from the battlefield and they will come in reserves. So, potential first turn charge or a surprise in the back. And then I have a unit of Hybrid Metamorphs. These are Gene Stealers with some human in it. It's a simple squad of 6. They all have Hand Flamers. And surprisingly, they are stronger in melee than Gene Stealers. Because they're hitting with Strength 5 natively. They fight on death if they die in battle. And they also have a Trap is Sprung, which means these guys on their first if they're set up on the battlefield as reinforcements by being set up on the ground, till the end of the turn, if they make a charge roll, I roll 1 additional dice. So they're going to get 3d6 on their first charge. They have good firepower. Hand Flamers just do a lot of damage. Then we have this. So my army is essentially a giant forward push. And the issue is the deep strikes from the back can really screw me over, especially with my command station of like all the important characters next to each other. So these guys essentially are going to screen out any invasions from the back, as well as hopefully be able to apply crossfire markers. So there's 70 points per unit. I have 2 of them. And the thing is, there's about 10 wounds total with a 4-up armor save. For this entire squad, which is important because compared to the vehicle, I can't remember what it was called, but what was it called? The Achilles Ridge Runner, that vehicle, they have more wounds and the same save. So they have better survivability and they're cheaper. They also have the Sergeant, and one guy has a grenade launcher, which will help easily proc the exposed or crossfire markers. And they also have -1 to hit, which is superior to the Achilles Ridge Runners. So these guys are screeners and applying crossfire markers. And then we have the heavy supports. So these are Goliath Rock Grinders. One has a Hesme Seismic Cannon, and one has the Clarence Incinerator. So I did not want to give them the Laser Blast because it's a blast. These guys are going to go into melee combat, and I just don't do really well with it. It's just like, it's a D3 shots. It's basically a Last Cannon / Melta because it's D6 wounds, but not that good. These guys will be holding some Gene Stealers in, and they'll be strong melee pushes. Oh, and I forgot to mention my transports specifically. They're all the same, except they all have not rugged construction, but they all have cache demolition charges. So if anyone gets close, they're going to get shot with it. And yeah, and that is 2,000 points of Twisted Helix. And I will also point out that Twisted Helix gives my entire army bootleg transhuman on a 1 and 2. As well as +1 to move, even to the vehicles, and +1 strength in general. So that is my army.
Alright, you guys, so I have 2,000 points of the Twilight Sadath. So it's actually 1,996 points. So my Warlord is the Troop Master. So this is a battalion. Yes, a battalion detachment. Now, he has both a Relic and a Warlord trait. He originally had a Harlequin's Kiss. And there's a relic, one of those, but then I realized that the Twilight Sadath had a unique relic for a power sword, Eldari power sword, so I switched to that. So he has that, which is the Twilight Fang, which is really interesting, because what it does is it gains attacks equal to the battle round number. So the farther into the battle it goes, the more and more attacks he's going to get as a bonus, and he already has a decent amount of attacks. And then he also has the Warlord trait, Favorite of Sigurach, which once per turn, hit, wound, or saving throw can be treated as an unmodified roll of 6 instead, which will be, I think, pretty cool. Keep him alive, maybe. And then, he has the regular... Oh, wait, he has 2 things. Yes. Oh, and then he has the upgrade for Veiled King, which means unless it's a vehicle or a monster, he always wounds on a 2-up, which will be nice. Now, the Shadow Seer to his immediate left, I actually forgot to put in his psychic powers, but he has Twilight Pathways and Fog of Dreams, as well as he has the points upgrade Agent of Pandemonium, which means enemy units within 6 inches of him subtract 1 from their attack's characteristic. And then I gave him the Warlord trait, which is anytime either of us spends a command point, I roll a dice, and on a 6, I gain a command point. So I don't know if that'll actually come into play, but I figured I'd try it because I think it's the Twilight unique Warlord trait. So I figured that might be cool. Yes. And then that's it for my HQs, even though I have 2 other characters, they're elites. Into the troops choices. So I have 3 squads of 5, 1 squad of 6, and the final squad of 7. It's literally just because of points. But the loadout for the squad is the same. So the purple guys all have just shuriken pistols and Harlequins blades. The blue guys have fusion pistols and Harlequins blades. And then the lead players have Harlequin's kiss and a fusion pistol. So each squad will have 2 fusion pistols and then a Harlequin's kiss in it at all times, hopefully. And then that's it for troops. Their troops are pretty cheap, actually. I was surprised by how cheap Harlequins were. Moving into the elites, though, is literally just the Death Jester and the Solitaire. So the Death Jester, he has obviously his usual Shrieker cannon, but I gave him there's a point upgrade, so each character has 3 different upgrades they could take. So I gave him Harvester of Torment, so unmodified hit rolls of 6 give him 3 additional hits. So that could be really cool. He only is Assault 3, so I don't know if it'll come into play, but... and then, obviously, anything he kills counts as 2 models killed for the morale phase, which is pretty cool. And then the Solitaire, my other elite. Now, he's pretty interesting. He's not allowed to take any relics or warlord traits. I thought that was interesting. But he's basically super speedy. I did give him, though, there's a point upgrade. So each time he advances, I don't make an advance roll. He just moves an additional 6 inches. And when he piles in or consolidates, he can move an additional 3 inches. So he just moving and moving and moving. With a ridiculous 8 attacks. And then is where I get into fast attacks. So I have 2 squads of 3 identical Skyweavers. They have the the Shuriken Cannon and the Zephyr Glaives. So basically they're like a combat-y jet bike thing with Shuriken Cannons. And so I'm hoping that that'll be interesting. They're really, really fast, so we'll see what they're able to do. And then moving into my heavy supports, 2 squads of Void Weavers. Now, I left them both the same. They both have the Void Weaver Haywire Cannon, which is 2d3 shots at strength 4, so nothing ridiculous, but it's AP minus 3 and 3 damage. Now, if it's shooting against a vehicle, unmodified wound rolls of 4 always hit, always wound. And on an unmodified wound roll of 6, D3 mortal wounds are inflicted in addition to any normal damage. So that'll be interesting. So they'll get to fly around and just like harass things. And then I have 3 dedicated transports, which are my Star Weavers. And they just have 2 Shuriken Cannons. I believe it's 2 Shuriken Cannons. And they are able to take up to 6 units. So they'll literally be just running around shooting stuff. And yeah, that is 2,000 points of Harlequins.
Alright, so for today's mission, it is the Scouring. So it is a Control 1, Control 2, Control More. The secondary objective is that you go onto an objective and you start an action, and it takes 1 whole battle round to complete. And for every one you complete, that's 3 points. You can do only 1 per turn and 1 on each different objective. And that is the mission. Alright, so for secondaries, for the Gene Stealer cults, I have Engage on all fronts, because I'm going to be doing that anyway. just going everywhere with my vehicles. And then with Ambush, which is a Gene Stealer Cult secondary, basically I get points if I kill my enemies with style. I get 1 point if I kill an enemy unit that had a crossfire marker. I get 2 points if I kill them with a unit that came out of my reserves from underground or ambush. And then I get another 2 points if I kill someone by ranged that was also exposed. So I have a cap of 4 points, so we'll see how that goes. And then grind them down. Maybe I'll get lucky. Just having all synergy. Take the board, kill everything. That's pretty much what my secondaries are.
Yep, so I took 2 from the Harlequins, and I originally was only thinking of taking 1, but I decided to take the second one just because I know I definitely wouldn't be able to have taken all 3. So the one I was unsure about but added anyway was I score 3 points if 2 or more of the following are satisfied. I control an objective marker I did not control at the start of the turn, and a Harlequins unit from your army is within range of that objective marker, obviously. A Harlequins unit from your army is wholly within your opponent's deployment zone. 2 or more enemy units were destroyed by an attack made with a ranged weapon by a Harlequins model from your army this turn. Or 2 or more enemy units were destroyed in melee. So that's deadly performance. So if I get 2 of those 4 things, I get 3 points. The other one is a psychic action from my Shadow Seer. Basically, he marks a unit. It starts off at a warp charge 3, and every time he successfully does it, it gains in warp charge by 1, and that is 3 points. So it just has to be a different unit each time within 18 inches. He does the psychic action, and it's 3 points. And then I did engage in all fronts. My army is super mobile, like ridiculously so, and so I can't imagine that being an issue. So I figured it was just kind of a natural take. We will see, however.
Alright, so for deployment for Gene Stealer cults, I'm placing a lot of these ambush markers around, hoping I counted it right. So technically speaking, I have to place a marker for each unit, but it doesn't say that I have to mark which specific one it is, so I could swap them out of my mental map. But it's good to know what goes where for your strategy. But I never saw in the book anywhere where it says that this specific unit has to be tied to that marker. It's just that these are spawn points. And just for clarification, if I go first, they will spawn in the command phase. If my opponent goes first, they spawn at the end of his movement phase. And so I'll be able to heavily counter him. And they have to be placed within 1 inch of the center of each marker. At least if it's multiple models, it's like one of them has to and the rest of you built around, and they can't be spawned into the no man's land or anywhere close to it. So this is a cheeky way of really tricking my opponent for what to build, and if he gets the first turn, I might be able to deny him some line of sight and stuff. And yeah, so apart from that, my characters, my Biophagus is absolutely worthless to me. He was only useful in pregame, so he's up in the top to basically be a screener for any reserves if there would be any, and that's pretty much it. Nexos is he doesn't need line of sight for anything, so he's literally put in a place where he can't be shot from any direction, any line of sight, without my opponent going way in through. Basically, my army has to be dead to reach him, so he's fine just chilling over there. My Magus just took up a spot, and that's it. All the rest of my guys are in transports and stuff, and so we'll see what happens.
Yeah. So I didn't really have as much of a plan with mine. I started with my transports, just because I think, but I really just kind of evenly spaced stuff out because my army is so mobile. I don't know how much it super matters where they actually start off on the map, because all the vehicles are 16-inch movement, so, and then they can auto run 6 inches, so they're just, I don't know, they're fast. And so I wasn't actually a whole lot worried where they were gonna start. And yeah, so I just kind of evenly spaced them out because they could easily jump almost anywhere in my half of the table on the opposite side, or they could probably almost touch his table, his deployment zone, just going straight ahead. So yeah, so interesting. We'll see how it goes though. Yeah. All right, you guys. So for who wants to go first? Firstly, I don't know if I don't think I want to go first. I think I want to go second. Sure, I could run ahead and block up a bunch of his stuff back in his deployment zone, I'm sure, in combat and whatever. But it would be nice to know kind of what I'm dealing with before I run across the board. So him going first, everything would pop up before I move. Now, granted, going first would allow me to literally take 4, if not all 5 of the objectives, probably. Just straight up.
What a flex.
How fast I am. Yeah. But again, I just wouldn't know what they would be running up against until after my movement phase. So if he goes first, he's way slower than I am. Yeah, he has stuff that can pop up, but most of my stuff is protected vehicles, so I'm not super worried. And yeah, so I think going second would make the most sense for me, but of course going first I can handle just as well. So I don't know if this is as much of a I really need to be second, or it's kind of like going second would be nice, but it's like 60-40, you know?
For me, I would prefer to go second, but the way Genestealer Colts are built, I have a lot of advantages. If I go first, I am deleting one of these Skyweaver units in combat. That's just a given. However, all my guys will be out in the open, so basically I have to play super ballsy. I have to give my entire army for him to shoot, hopefully survive, and the next turn obliterate his army in close quarters. So this game could be it's just like, because he has so many really anti-tank vehicles, and my whole army is basically running on vehicles. And then he has a bunch of anti-infantry stuff, so like, he counters me hard. This map, these little stupid web gate things slow you down. Difficult ground, really rough on me. So if I go first, one of these Skyweavers will die. I have no doubt about that. I will probably pile into another unit after the fact, or actually I could kill one and then completely disappear off the board. I mean, Genestealer Colts can do that. But if I go second, basically what we'll do is I will do my best to deny him the worst shooting. He will take the board, and then I will have a very target-rich environment to slog through. So I can make the most of a first turn, but it would be far better if I go second for me. I will deny him a good amount of first turn shooting because I can finagle where my troops spawn in to deny him as much line of sight, because I come at the end of his movement phase, I can put my troops in such a way that I will deny them line of sight for a lot of their weapons and stuff. If I go first, I'll make the most of it, but I'll barely be able to do anything. Actually, yeah, that's pretty much it. This is a really bad situation for me. This is an uphill battle, unless the dice say otherwise. If I go first, I might get some first striking, but it's really just a very difficult game. So, yeah, we will see how it goes. So let's roll. I can play both, but I would prefer to go second, officially. The game froze right there.
I just dropped my die. Got a 4. Looks like you're going first.
One time I didn't. Alright, Genestealer Colts, turn 1.
Alright, you guys, so I used Phantasm on my 2, they're not jet bikes, Skyweavers, because going first, they would have literally been able to just fly across and charge, like, they would have gotten a first turn charge, 100%. But now that I'm not going first, he just has a lot of shots, and Eldar are not known for their durability. So I just pulled them back. I'm hoping the white one will still survive. They're behind a building at the front, but I don't know. Anyway, but if not, the orange one at least hopefully will. So yeah, so I just moved them back to help protect them until they can go out and kill stuff.
For my really long command phase and stuff. One thing to point out is from top down, I thought the terrain feature that the Nexus I placed at was like a building and not just like an area terrain. So my opponent let me remove him to somewhere else. So I put him elsewhere that was someplace I actually understood what it was. It was an actual building. So that's why the Nexus seems to have teleported. Now, apart from that, So I started my actual deployment. So first off, the Gene Stealers with lying in wait. So when they're first set up from their token, they get a free move. Just a normal move. It doesn't say advanced. So these guys moved 9 inches because of Twisted Helix gives them +1 to move. And so then I put out the rest. And accidentally somehow my Goliath trucks lost their color coding. So I can't actually see which ones are. But the Goliath truck in the middle will have the guys with guns. The rest will have the Flamers or the Acolytes. The very Gene Stealer-like hybrids. And so basically the only thing I can think of is I need to get in front as fast as possible. All my vehicles are now in cover. That's pretty much it. Yeah, that's it. So I'm going to have all my cover bonuses and everything. My bikes went up, took up the sides here and stuff. I didn't want to run because I'm not really sure what I'm dealing with fully. I mean, I could get like halfway up the battlefield, but I don't know for sure. So Patriarch also ran. I put him in a super soft spot or safe spot. And the green Atlants up top are doing the mission secondary. And yeah, and then my Pure Strange Gene Stealers, I spent 1 CP to allow them to do a full run move. And so they move 6 inches, so now they're very close to the enemy, and we will see what happens. Yeah. Alright, for my very short psychic phase, essentially what happens is I have the Magus target the Gene Stealers. Now, I can't see them or reach them, but I have a CP strat that will allow me, but I only use it after the spell's been cast. So I cast my spell, and it failed. I needed a 6. I then, however, because she has the Crouchling Relic, allows me to reroll once per psychic phase. So I did, and I made it on a 9. He couldn't dispel it because he was 39 inches away for dispelling. So it went through, and my Gene Stealers now have +1 attack each. And because I had to spend a CP to allow them to be reached, my Nexos rolled, and on a 5-up, he rolled a 6. I got my CP back. My opponent rolled his dice to see if he could gain a CP. He did not. And so my Nexos has gained 1 point already, so he's already paying dividends. And yeah, and that was the psychic phase. Alright, I'm going straight to charge phase. I'm skipping shooting because the few things I can shoot can only really shoot his Skyweavers, and I needed to make sure that none of them die so that they could be reached for the Pure Strange Gene Stealer. So I skipped the shooting phase, and I went for the charge. So I needed a 5 to do a multi-charge against the Skyweavers and his yellow Harlequins that are right next to the wall. And I rolled a 9, and so I moved in heavily. Alright, so for the fight phase, the Gene Stealers swung. However, apparently, not only are they -1 to hit his entire army, but I was within 6 inches of his Shadow Seer, which made me have -1 attack and -1 to wound. So that was actually very devastating. However, I did actually do, before I swung, I said, best case scenario, I kill 2 of the Skyweavers and half of the Harlequin squad. And I did exactly that. With all those debuffs. I would have wiped them out if it wasn't for those debuffs. So, yeah, took 2 Skyweavers and half of his squad, or actually more than half. There's only 3 left. And then he swung back, and I only rolled 1 4-up. And I lost 4 Gene Stealers, so that was disappointing. But, yeah, so that was, I don't know, we'll see what happens. That was a good first blow, but we'll see what happens. Alright, nothing happened. Well, we'll see what happens. So, one thing to note, we did have a morale phase. I didn't bother to record it, but essentially his Harlequins failed it. He spent a CP to reroll it, and they're good. And apart from that, nothing else happened. So, honestly, I don't know what to make of this turn. It was a decent opener. I think I played the best, but we'll see what happens.
Alright, you guys, so for the movement phase, a bunch of stuff happened. All of my transports essentially ran, so that was 22-inch movements. Except for maybe the green. No, the green one ran. The Void Weavers did not run, so they just kind of relocated, gave them a little bit of space. The purple squad ran up to this bottom objective here, and started the mission secondary. The combat units jumped out of combat because they can and go back into it. So they did. And that was... Oh, and then the orange Sky Weavers kind of move forward into an area where they kind of have a wide threat range. Because I don't really know what I want them to do just yet. And yeah, that was my movement phase. Alright, you guys, so for the Psychic phase, he tried to smite the Gene Stealers and he failed. Then he tried to put Fog of Dreams on the yellow squad of players, troop squad, and he failed that too. So just a lot of failure going on.
Just to clarify, he is the
phase.
Shadow Seer. Yes.
Yes, the Shadow Seer. He's
And
the only Psyker in the Harlequin army.
Yeah, and that is the Psychic phase.
So, for shooting, a lot happened, but at the same time, a lot did not happen.
Yes.
So, I started with my Void Weavers at the top, shooting at his Rock Grinder nearest me, and they were able to put 6 damage on it. And then the Star Weaver next to them shot at it, and I don't think he did anything. Or either way, it was a total of 6 damage that went on to him.
He did 1 wound, but yeah, that was underwhelming.
Yeah, okay, there you go. Yes. And then the Sky Weaver, the Yellow Troop, the Shadow Seer, and the Green Star Weaver all shot at his Gene Stealers behind me. And I think I killed 2. Yeah, so that was pathetic. But again, the invulnerable saves, they just always have a 50-50 odd of living. And then my Void Weavers at the bottom shot at his Rock Grinder, and they actually did horrible. The only thing that went through were mortal wounds on their whatever. So that was bad. And then the Orange Sky Weaver shot at the Goliath truck next to them. Figure might as well. Because that way they could at least wound it on 4. So they did 1 damage. And then the Blue Star Weaver shot at his Rock Grinder up at the top again. Did nothing. Then the Green Star Weaver, the Death Jester shot out of it. And I think he
killed 1
Gene
Stealer.
Yeah, so bringing their death to a total of 2 on those Gene Stealers.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the shooting phase. Really, really disappointing.
It was mostly due to 2 things. All my trucks and everything was rushed forward, so he has tons of targets. I mean, he could have selected 1 to fire, but like, this was my best chance. And the area terrains gave me +1 to my save and -1 to hit. That really went very far. And of course, all my Goliath trucks and Goliath Rock Grinders have -1 damage. So that's kind of why a lot of them survived. And yeah, it's quite surprising.
Alright, you guys, so for this charge phase, a couple of things happened. First off, I believe I started with the back.
Mm-hmm.
So my Sky Weaver charged his Gene Stealers, and he actually failed initially, so that was dumb. But I used a command point and re-rolled it, and then I tried to get a command point back from my Shadow Seer on a 6, and it's not happened. So out of like all the command points that have been used, I have not gained a single one back yet. Anyway, then the Yellow Troop charged into the Gene Stealers, as did the Shadow Seer, which is kind of risky, but I mean, you know, whatever, might as well see what he can do. And then I tried to charge the Red Star Weaver actually into his Atlan Jackals, but I did not realize that there was a vehicle there, because on my screen, I don't know what the glitch is with the Gene Stealer cult vehicles. I can only see 1, and it's all white. The rest are just little pearls, and the middle of the map just has a bunch of like white stuff on it, so I didn't even see it. And so I was like, well, I guess I might dual charge, but then I realized that their vehicles actually do stuff in combat, and I was like, well, then I don't really want to get him involved with that.
Yeah, I allowed him to undo it simply because he didn't have the same information as I did because of a bug, so that was fine.
Yeah. So I just put him back. And then my Orange Sky Weavers charged his Goliath truck. I figured they have a lot of attacks. It's only toughness 6, so they'll need 5 to wound, but I mean, you know, why not give it a go? And yeah, so they charged in. He overwatched a lot of shots, but he only ended up doing 2 damage. A couple went through though, but they have obviously a 4-up invuln, so they didn't care.
Yeah.
And yeah, that was the charge phase. Alright, you guys, so for the fight phase, I used Kiss of Death, hopefully trying to mortal them off, but I didn't actually roll a single 6 with my troop. And I think they actually didn't kill anyone. There was only 4 of them left?
Yeah, only 4.
And yeah, so I don't think they actually killed any of them. Like, they all just rolled garbage and not a single 6. Or he saved what little went through. Then my Shadow Seer swung, and I think 3 went through, but he saved 2 of them, so the Shadow Seer actually smushed 1. And then it was the lone Skyweaver, Seeking Vengeance, that actually killed the other 3. Now, I did use quite a few of my, what is it called? Harlequin, the Panoply of the Laughing God? Luck of the Laughing God. Now, it says that it just tells you how to get them. It doesn't say that there's a cap on using them. So if someone else knows something, feel free to say so. But I use like 6 dice trying to kill those stupid Gene Stealers. So yeah, so if you know something, let me know. But yeah. And that was it. So they wiped it, and then they consolidated. Because I'm the Twilight Sadeath, they were able to move an additional 2 inches. So the Yellow Troop moved 5, the Skyweaver moved 5, and then the Shadow Seer moved like 3, I think, just to keep them behind and stuff, you know. And that was my fight phase. All right, you guys. So for points, essentially, I got none. So technically, I'm sitting on 3 primaries, and I'm doing the mission secondary. However, that all doesn't happen until my next turn. So Deadly Performance, I did take an objective that I did not start owning, which was the 3. However, I didn't do any of the other 3, so I had to get at least 2. So that was killing 2 units in melee, killing 2 units by shooting, or being in his deployment zone. So none there. Weave Veil, I actually completely forgot about this secondary, so I forgot to do the psychic action. And then on Gauge on All Fronts, I'm not quite there yet. So really sad first turn, I think. Really sad.
All right, for my long movement phase, first command phase, Nexos, put on crossfire marker on the purple purple Harlequins that are on the top right. After that, tons of movement happened. So, carefully moving my. I also spent 1 CP on my Goliath Rockgrinder up top, which is, that happens in the command phase, and basically what happens is it treats my vehicle as being at full wounds. So my Goliath Rockgrinder is treated as being at full health instead of 4 wounds left, essentially. So it's got its full attacks and movement. And so the Gene Stealers popped out of the top and the bottom, and they moved to their appropriate targets. They each ran. They didn't have to run far, despite rolling really trash. I didn't use any rerolls for them. They got close enough to their targets. And then after that, like the Goliath Rockgrinder up top moved closer to be able to charge the Stormweaver. On the bottom, the Goliath Rockgrinder moved to be able to charge the Voidweavers. The Goliath trucks moved. They're open top, so the guys inside are going to mag dump to enemies nearby. Patriarch moved in between 2 vehicles to be safe. The Goliath truck that is in combat had his guys disgorge or get out, disembark, to be able to do something better. They're on the objective now. And yeah, my red squad of Atlan Jackals is doing the action. The green squad up top is not doing much. Well, they're moving up to be able to shoot. Yeah, and that is essentially it. And then at the end of the movement phase, my giant squad of neophytes came in. I decided to put them towards my half because, better terrain and cover there, so they will have a very difficult time being moved off. So they're just going to mag dump everything. And then my hybrid metamorphs came on the bottom right to probably do something to the Voidweavers. And that was my very long movement phase. For the psychic phase, first I have the Magus go. And basically what she did was she just activated Might from Beyond on the green Gene Stealers up top. She got it off. And that was pretty much it. I spent 1 CP to allow her to be able to target them after it went off, despite having no line of sight and being too far. And it worked. After that, the Patriarch then went, and he used his psychic abilities on that Skyweaver that was there just to finish it off, because having one just run around and stuff was annoying. Then he, unfortunately, he failed his Psionic Blast, so I had to sacrifice the Familiar with him to allow him to re-roll it. He doesn't have the crouchling like the Magus, so he doesn't get that bonus. Then he used Smite on the Skyweavers that were hitting the Goliath truck, the orange ones, and he successfully got it off, and it did 1 wound. And that was the psychic phase. Alright, so for the shooting phase, a lot happened. So the Goliath Rock Grinder up top, yellow, fired at the Void Reavers with his Clearance Incinerator. Did 1 wound. They were toughness 5, so I could have wounded them on 3s with the Flamer. Terrible. Kept rolling tons of 4-ups. Then after that, oh shoot, I can barely remember. So the Goliath truck up top, the guys inside fired their guns, flamers, so 10 flamers, strength 3 flamers. They wiped out his Harlequin squad that was on the point. The vehicle fired at I believe the Void Weaver in the middle. Did a little bit of damage. Moving on from there, the green squad fired at them too to try to proc a crossfire marker on them. The hybrid metamorphs on the bottom right fired at the Void Weavers since they auto hit with their flamers to try to get a crossfire marker on them. They did a bunch of wounds. Then the Goliath Rock Grinder with the heavy seismic cannon fired at them and did nothing. Then the Goliath truck at the bottom with the guys inside, there's 10 flamers from the Acolytes, fired at the remaining of his squad there and just deleted them. The vehicle then fired at the Shadow Seer, did absolutely nothing. The giant yellow squad fired everything they had. I spent a CP for a stratagem which all my 6s to hit would auto wound with their shotguns and stuff. And it took all the shotguns, all the flamers, and all the seismic cannons, all of them, to finally kill it, just barely. Even with the auto wounds on 6s to hit, that barely did anything. After that, then my red squad of neophytes fired at the guys that came out and killed 3 of them. With 2 flamers, 6 shotguns, and 2 seismic cannons, was only able to kill 3 of the 6 Harlequins. And that was... I don't know, that was it. That was the shooting phase. Very long and meticulous. Alright. A lot of charges. So from top, the Goliath Rock Grinder charged his Star Weaver. The Green Gene Stealers charged his Void Weavers. What else did I do? My Patriarch charged the Orange Sky Weavers in the middle. Then I had my unit of Metamorphs charge the Void Weavers. Now, they have an ability that I gave them, which was a trap is sprung. So once they come out of reserves and stuff, the first time they charge and such, they get an extra D6. And so I rolled it, failed. I did not refund my CP. My opponent didn't get a CP from that. And the second time I rolled, I made it in. So they charged in and made it. Then my Goliath Rock Grinder charged and made it in. My red Gene Stealers charged his Shadow Seer. And then my red unit of Neophyte Hybrids charged the Sky Weavers in the middle. And that was it. And we'll see what happens. Alright. That was a long combat. Since my opponent couldn't stop me, I decided to just go from top to bottom. So Goliath Rock Grinder swung on the Star Weaver. Since I spent the CP to make it treat him as if he was at his full health, he got 6 attacks and plus 2 attacks on his charge. And so with 8 attacks, he did 2 wounds because his attack was damage 2. So only 1 got through after all that. Then my green Pure Strain Gene Stealers buffed with Might from Beyond, gave them all 1 extra attack. They were able to kill 1 and do 2 damage to another Void Reaver. And then after that, I went with the Patriarch, why not? He swung, and apparently my opponent has abilities that stop me from getting rerolls. That's just entirely. To hit. And I rolled horribly on to hit. I missed 2 attacks, but my character also had exploding 6s, and so was able to do really well and hit hard. But he almost killed one guy. One guy had 2 wounds left, and then I had my red Neophyte swing. They are trash in combat, and they did 1 wound. So the Sky Weaver has 1 left. Then after that, I had my Rock Grinder swing on the Void Weavers, and was able to kill 1 and do 2 damage to another. Then the Hybrid Metamorphs swung. these guys actually very strong. They were hitting on strength 6. They normally hit on strength 5, but Twisted Helix brings it up to strength 6. And unfortunately, his Shadow Seer was still alive, so it reduced one of my attacks by 1 and my wounds by 1. If it wasn't for that, I would have killed the Void Weaver because they brought it down to 1 wound. So we'd managed to take a total of 6 attacks from them and make it harder to wound them. It's actually a really powerful buff. It's getting irritating. And then my Pure Strength Gene Stealers all swung on the Shadow Seer, did only 2 wounds with all their attacks, like 18 attacks, because again, he's reducing their attacks by 1. Ridiculous. And that was it for my swings. Then his swings back. His Star Weaver up top did jack to my Rock Grinder. His Void Weaver up top did a wound, which I immediately saved. He had his Sky Weaver in the middle swing on my Neophyte Hybrid, and killed 2 of them. Then his Shadow Seer swung on my Gene Stealers, killed 1 of them. And then his Void Weaver swung and did a wound to my Metamorphs, but they have a 5-up armor save and they made it. And that was the fight phase. Alright, so for points, I did control 1, I controlled 2. I have completed 1 round of the Scouring, so I got 3 points. I am all over the map, so I got engaged on all fronts. I got ambushed this turn, so I killed 1 unit that had a crossfire marker, I know for sure. And I got 2 points because I killed one that came from ambush or underground. My giant unit of 20 did destroy that vehicle, so that counts as 2, so I got 3. Grind them down, I have killed 3 units this turn, so we'll see what happens in the next turn. And that is it. It's looking pretty good.
Alright, you guys, so for movement, I pulled out all my units for my transports, which was only 2 left, but and then the transports made a run for his deployment zone. And then my Void Weavers left combat and kind of jumped over to kind of safer shooting points. And then everything that was in combat left combat. And then, so my Troop Master and my Red Squad are making their way towards the middle. My Solitaire and the Blue Squad are actually staying still because they don't actually need to move. And then the Green Squad moved towards the Gene Stealers and his Hybrid Metamorphs. And then the Shadow Seer pulled himself out of combat just to be able to do other things and then go back in. And that was my... Oh, and the Orange Skyweaver, the other one left, popped out as well. And that was my turn. I did my Psychic action on his Gene Stealers. He tried to deny it, but he was unable to. I rolled a 5, he rolled a 4. Or I rolled a 6 and he rolled a 5. Something. It was really sad on both accounts. And then he smote the exact same Gene Stealers. He only did 1 mortal wound, though. So I used one of my Laughing God dice to try and re-roll that damage roll. And then I rolled a 1 again. So only 1 died, which was sad. And that was my second phase. Alright, so... my red troop shot their fusion pistols at his, I think it's just a Goliath truck. And because it was already pretty heavily wounded, but they were able to finish it off. And then the Troop Master shot at his other Goliath truck, or maybe it was a Rock Grinder that they shot at. Anyway, so the Goliath truck on the little swirling prism thing in the middle, and I think he did 3 damage. I don't know if it had damage before, but there's 3 damage on it now. And then the troop shot its last pistol at his Jackals, and pretty sure nothing happened. But then my Skyweaver shot his Shuriken Cannon and actually killed 3 Jackals off, which was pretty impressive, I think, considering they all hit and all wounded. And then my Blue Squad shot at his Goliath truck. Maybe they're the ones that did the damage. And with their 2 fusion pistols, but it only has 3 damage, so somewhere along the line, someone failed horribly. Then moving on, the Green Squad shot their fusion pistols at his Goliath truck on the Webway Gate, but they did some damage, but not a lot. And then the Death Jester shot at his Hybrid Metamorphs, killing off 3 of them. And then the Shadow Seer tried to also do something to them, but he failed everything. And then the Void Weaver shot the Goliath Rock Grinder, so it fell back, but I used the Stratagem Feigned Retreat to allow it to shoot. And then, but yeah, it only did like, I don't know, 4 damage, 3 damage, something like that.
Yeah.
So, not great. And that was the shooting phase. All right, you guys. So I charged the. I did a couple of things. One, my Star Weavers, because Harlequins can fall back and charge. Charged his Magus and his Nexos, and they both got in. Then my Red Troop charged his Atlan Jackal leader guy, and they got in because they were right next to him anyway. Then my Orange Skyweaver charged his big block of neophytes. He overwatched and killed him, which was fine because I wanted the Troop Master in there actually. And then my blue squad charged the smaller squad of neophyte hybrids, as did the Solitaire. But because the Solitaire Harlequins can jump over and around people, he just went through, so that way he could also consolidate later into the other squad of neophytes. And then the green squad, the Death Jester, and the Shadow Seer all charged the Pure Strain Gene Stealers to hopefully kill them. And we will see, but that was the charge phase. Okay, so for combat, started with the Star Weavers. So the first one swung on his Magus, did nothing. The second one, the green one, swung on his Nexos, did 2 damage. So that was something. Then the red troop swung on his Jacqueline leader, killed him off. And then my troop master swung, killed 6 of them. And then between the blue squad and the Solitaire, they wiped that much smaller, with a 10-man squad. I think the troop themselves did probably 4 or 5, and then the Solitaire had 9 attacks, so he polished the rest off. Or I think only 4 went through. So the troop killed 6, and then he killed 4. And then the green squad swung, and so I used the Kiss of Death stratagem, so their Harlequin's Kiss thing can do the mortals on 6s. And so I did 4 mortal wounds, which was exactly the squad, so they died. But that he also rolled the saves anyway, and he failed like 4 or 5 of them. So that went through anyway. And then my Shadow Seer and Death Jester decided to, because the Rock Rider only had 3 wounds left, and I was like, well, who knows? And so they did 2 damage, so he lived with 1. So it came down to the Shadow Seer, whose D3 damage, if I got a 5 or 6, would have killed the Rock Grinder. But I rolled a 1. And I think I even tried to re-roll it. Or maybe not, I don't remember.
No,
but either way,
you couldn't
so that was
re-roll it.
really depressing. Yeah, so that was depressing. But then that was my side of the fight phase.
And as for me, well, actually, it was surprising. The worst people fought, and they did pretty good. The Magus swung against the Star Weaver and did 2 wounds to it, because it has a +3 strength staff, which is D3 wounds. So 1 went through and did 2 damage. Then the Nexo swung and did absolutely nothing. Then the giant, or my Rock Grinder, then swung on the Shadow Seer, and with all of its damage on its last wound left alive, it did 2 wounds to it, bringing it down to 1 wound, so it's right there, ready to die. Then my yellow squad of neophytes, half of them swung on his Solitaire, half swung on his Troop Master, and I did a wound to each of them. That was surprising. Yeah, and that was the turn. Yeah, or the fight phase at least. Alright, so for the morale phase, I had to take it. On the bottom right, my red metamorphs rolled. So apparently his ability is that everyone who dies counts as 2 for leadership.
Yep. The
And,
Death Jester's shuriken cannon thing.
yeah, and so basically, they counted as losing 6. So I failed my leadership test, and I passed my attrition test with flying colors. Then my yellow neophyte hybrids rolled. They rolled a 2 with their leadership 8. They actually made it. They only lost 6, so they just barely made it. And that was the morale phase.
All right, you guys. So for this turn, I didn't have any primaries, no secondary, mission secondary. So I got 3 points for deadly performance because I killed a couple units in melee. Veil, I got that one this turn, and then I actually got 2 points for engage in all fronts. So, okay, actually, for my mission secondaries this time, but overall garbage. And yeah, so those are my points.
Alright guys, so we decided to call it there, simply because my opponent, Harlequins, killed very little, and now that it was the Gene Stealer Colt's turn, the amount of devastation that would be dropped on them was too high to come back from, and so I found it as pointless to continue. My opponent probably would have had a quarter of his army left, and most of the board would be completely under my control. The outer fringes would just be there, so we decided to call it there for Genestealer Cult victory. Just attrition. That's pretty much it. So, MVP, LVP for the Genestealer Cults. Now, everyone did very well. There was no real true loser, essentially, in the Genestealer Cults. Everyone did their job well. There were just ones that, not necessarily they didn't perform well, it's that they performed as expected. Everyone did what was expected. And so, MVP and LVP is very close. So, I'm going to give LVP to my Nexos, which is actually a very difficult thing to say because he saved me like 3 CP in the game, and he plays crossfire markers on certain opponents, which never really came into play, but the fact of the matter is that he was... The only thing that made him an LVP is because everyone performed average or above average. And so I only give him LVPs because he didn't do a wound to the vehicle that was beating him up, Starweaver. And that's it. That's the only reason I could possibly give him as LVP. He was the least performing unit, which is pretty hard to say because everyone did incredibly well. Now when it comes to MVP, it's a very close 4-way tie. So first obviously is the Acolyte Hybrids, who in the Goliath trucks mag dumped and just obliterated whole squads of Harlequins. And when we were theory hammering, they were the key point that would delete most of my opponent's army. Because 10 flamers is a big deal, and if they got exposed, it'd be +1 to wound. So they're doing incredibly well, so they're a very important, strong unit, and so they slaughtered a lot. They were very key, very powerful turrets, basically. And of course, I had the Genestealers. The first turn charge slaughtered a lot of my enemy's opponents, and they survived. They endured a lot. They survived a very long time. These guys were basically high-hitting tanks. They took a good portion of my opponent's army and didn't die for a long time. My opponent had to spend forever focusing on them, so very valuable. Then I have, of course, the Goliaths. These guys, really strong. Goliath trucks, which basically focus as these open top turrets for all my guys on the inside to safely shoot with no problem or worry. Then I had these guys who delivered the Genestealer safely to the front and was a huge wall to deal with. The only thing I could say that were probably against them is their weapons really didn't do much. They were good transports and they did good in melee, and they sucked up a ton of damage. They sucked up a lot of damage and survived. They were basically walls and black holes, however you want to say it. So, I don't know if you want to comment which you think would be the MVP for this, but honestly, in the end, I would have to say the true MVP out of all these, which is very close, it's very hard, is just the Goliath trucks in general. Just not specifically the Grok Grinder or the trucks, but these guys in general, because my enemy had such great shooting that it was very important to them to deliver their payloads and protect their payloads without any issue. And so these guys were incredibly instrumental in winning, and not just because they were a vehicle, because there are other Genestealer Cult vehicles. Their -1 damage went very far, allowed them to survive a tremendous amount of punishment. And so these guys were very important, they were very cool, and if it wasn't for them, I would never have had a chance in the game. So MVP is just the Goliaths in general, and may whoever found the STC for them have their own planet. Yeah. Alright, so what was your MVP, LVP?
Well, yeah, so it was interesting. For me, I would say MVP as a hard choice would be the Shadowseer, simply from that wound and attack debuff. That was, that was impressive.
If it wasn't for that, I would have wiped out.
Yeah, that army as a whole already has like a -1 to hit, so like it's just like a lot of debuffs. I thought that was really cool. Psychically, he didn't do anything impressive. Like, it was actually really garbage. But so that was pretty cool. So I think he would probably be, because he was the one who just had a chance to do the most. Honestly, most of my army didn't get much of a chance to do stuff. Which is more how I played it. Sure, some of them rolled pretty crap initially, which was kind of bad, but yeah, so I would say MVP Shadowseer.
Definitely. I would like to add that if it wasn't for him, you would have lost that entire unit of Sky Weavers at the beginning and that whole unit of Harlequins, and they would have plummeted. The Gene Stealers that first struck would have gone into your vehicles and stuff, and probably would have kept slaughtering if you didn't have that -1 to wound and -1 attack. So he basically helped heavily. Like it was a major pillar. So yeah.
Yeah. So that was an interesting thing. And then I would say LVP was probably honestly the troops. They're really the only troops that they have. So Harlequins have a pretty small roster of units. So actually, I took some from literally everything that they could choose. So I think they, for this game, are the LVP because they died just a lot. I mean, they're very soft, toughness 3, single wound. Sure, they have an invuln save, but I roll really bad, so it doesn't help them any.
Well, to be fair, like every time I shot at them, they had to roll like 17 or 22 4-ups, and -1 to hit didn't matter with all my flamers, so I uniquely countered you. Like 20 flamer shots. That's a big deal.
Yeah. So what was interesting was that so I was thinking about doing it, but so they have others. So there's a Harlequin's Kiss, then they have a Caress, and then they have something else. But one of those pairs with a stratagem that actually ignores invulnerable saves. So the whole unit would have been able to turn off your invuln saves.
Oof.
It was only a 5-point upgrade, but I didn't take it because I was like, well, I don't know.
Gene Stealer cults have nothing except the Gene Stealers have a 4-up invuln saves. Yeah, that would have been a big deal.
And so if I had taken that, so even because you could just put it on one guy and it affects the whole unit as I understand it. Mm-hmm. So I just took a Harlequin's Kiss. So only one person had it, but it affected the whole unit as it reads. Or at least in the codex. Actually, I didn't even look in the app for the updated, if they tweaked any of it. So I don't know.
That would have been nasty.
Well, yeah. Anyway.
All right, moving on.
But so I think they are really soft. So anyway, so I would say the troops were probably the LVPs. Not because even they're necessarily bad. They had a ridiculous amount of attacks, especially as the Twilight Sadath. That gave them +1 on the charge, or when they were charged, or during a heroic intervention. Mm-hmm. So for this game, I would say they're the LVP.
Yeah. Least performing
unit. Gene Stealer cults again.
I love to play them.
Something different this time. How did it kind of feel to play?
So, they were very fun. I enjoyed them a lot, but this time I wanted to shore up. So one of the major flaws with them, or how I would play them, is they're all in vehicles. So I really do cut off a lot of my buffs. I don't get so with the Nexos, I could have it so all my guys could have reroll 1s to hit and wound if I paired with a Primus, but that can only affect guys that are out on the battlefield, not in vehicles. So this way of playing is like the Goliath trucks basically protect everyone inside, giving them 3-up armor saves, but I really do cut myself off from a lot of the buffs. And so I played appropriately for that. Now the biggest ultimate change I did was the inclusion of these Jackals and their purpose. So the issue is if I get like deep striked from the rear or stuff, my army can be completely screwed because I essentially have a bunch of commanders in the back hiding, doing nothing except applying buffs. And so comparing this, I said this like when I was designing the list at the beginning of the video, the Atlan Jackals are better than the Achilles Ridge Runners because these unit of 5 is 70 points with 2 grenade launchers, and the Atlan Jackal is 80 points. And so the thing is, these guys have -1 to hit. They have 10 wounds, so 2 more than the vehicle, but they're 5 different models, so I can't be hit with like a Melta or Last Cannon to be destroyed. And so these guys are great for screening. The grenade launchers with 24-inch range can easily, with the crack, be able to apply crossfire markers at a distance pretty well. So these guys were the big addition. So if you had a deep striking army, I could easily have these guys in the back, screening and keeping you in the front, where you'd have to focus with my actual military and might. And then there's the Biophagus who sat in the back and did nothing, but that was his job because I had no more use for him. So he screened as well. So the big change was I created a list that would force you to have to deal with my military might. You couldn't go around me, you couldn't sidestep me. But because you didn't have anything to sidestep me and stuff, I was able to easily take up these objectives and stuff. And these guys were hard to shift. And you had to fire a lot to kill the green squad. Lasted longer than I expected. Yeah. Overall, the Gene Stealer Cults is a very fun army to play because it's very difficult to deal with their movement phase, and they take a very long time to play. Setup movement is very different because it's a horde army essentially. But even with all that, they're very fun to play. You're playing your own game. They really did a good codex because it really matches their lore. You make these deep plans and then you go forth with it. And of course, with Twisted Helix, you get super powerful buffs. +1 to move. I completely forgot. +1 to move at...
Powerful.
Yeah, I know, I forgot because my trucks could have moved 11 inches onto this terrain and stuff. It's these small details, so I forgot about that actually. But Patriarch, I only remember the Gene Stealers having the +1 to move. But everyone having +1 strength really helped against you with that -1 to wound. +1 strength, the transhuman did come up. So I find the Twisted Helix to be the strongest and most fun to play out of all of them because they're just tougher, stronger in all the ways that matter. And Patriarch is super strong under Twisted Helix. He gets exploding 6s. Very dangerous for him. You completely nerfed him and took away a lot of his abilities with your debuffs, but even still, he slaughtered a good amount. So just Gene Stealer Cults are just fun to play against anything. And I do enjoy being able to deep strike a whole squad within 3 inches and just mag dumping whatever's in front. So, well, that's fun. So what do you think of the Harlequins? This is your first time playing them. This is my first time fighting against them. I knew they were insanely mobile, so I really wanted to screen you out and stuff. I didn't know they could basically run, fight, shoot, run, shoot, fight. I was
yeah, they basically do whatever they want.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it was interesting. They are very fragile.
Noted.
I kind of forgot, even as a whole, Eldar are very... I mean, sure, they have the invuln saves, so they always have a 50-50 of living. But they are very fragile with their single wounds.
Remember, you're not me. You can't roll those 4-up Gene Stealer Cults like I can.
But their damage output is impressive. Even just the base attacks out of a 5-man troop was 20 or 30 attacks out of
ridiculous.
5.
Yeah, and their Melta fusion pistols, yeah.
Granted, they come base with that Harlequin weapon, which is base strength, so they're only swinging strength 3. So I'm curious because all of them can be upgraded with a kiss. I believe it's just the kiss, and then only 1 or 2 can have the other ones, which gives them the +1 strength, and then it's -2, and then it's AP2 and 2 damage for 5 points. So I'm curious because the squads themselves are pretty cheap. So I wonder if everyone just runs them super buffed. That's what I don't know.
Yeah.
Because the fusion pistols are only 5 points, the kisses are only 5 points. I like the Void Weavers. I rolled really bad with them, so I think they're actually really nice anti-vehicle. They're fast, but I rolled bad.
Well, I also did my best to counter them by putting all the vehicles in terrain to protect them. So you had an uphill battle.
I don't even know if that was the biggest part of it. So I think what I probably did was because I did like them. They're fast. They can jump in and out and do what they want. Everything is open top, so they can run around and shoot their little fusion pistols from the inside if they want to. Granted, they have really short range with the fusion pistols, but so yes. But I think I probably just misplayed them pretty heavy. I probably should have stayed back another turn and let stuff come forward and then popped out, or maybe moved only 1 or 2 things out at a time. I don't know. So because they are so fragile, and even though they're extremely lethal, the Troop Master had 9 attacks, hits on 2s, wounds on 2s automatically. The Solitaire had 9 attacks on the charge. It was, there was a lot of damage to be had. But I think I probably just misplayed it because I mean, there were some points where I had some bad rolls.
Yeah, that was noticeable.
Some of your vehicles should have dropped sooner, but I mean, that's just the game dice. So
yeah, learning how to deal with failure and roll with the punches.
Yeah, so I think maybe more focal points for the Harlequins. Okay, I'm gonna focus on these two because my units are fast enough. They literally could have just jumped to one side of the board like the whole army and just focused on one section, like 2 vehicles or whatever. But I don't know. Maybe I've been playing Space Marines too long. I just like to run forward and punch stuff.
I could see you do that. That's why I kind of did my best to make sure my Patriarch was in the middle, because he is a force to be reckoned with. He would delete 1 unit a turn or a character if you focused on them. I mean, he did destroy 2 units. Yeah. So, and also a lot of my
one
range.
of those Harlequin units that turns off the influence saves though.
He still has a 5 up, feel no pain, but yeah, because Twisted Helix. Yeah, but like my trucks would move through this mire 11 inches because of Twisted Helix, and then having this like 10 flamers that shoot at 12 inches. So I had an obscene range, so I could deal with that if you couldn't cripple me. So yeah, it basically.
So I think there's some challenges to Harlequins. I think they're an army that you need to play them more than one time to.
Oh yeah, definitely. They're so
really
different.
kind of get the hang of them because they're pretty straightforward. Like they don't have a lot of units. They're fast. They hit hard. They're fragile. So like as far as like unit choices and kind of composition, that might be a little more on the straightforward side.
Yeah.
But I think the actual playing, like the actual tabletop tactics of it, is the challenge with Harlequins.
Yeah, it's like I can see how they're so. They've been tournament winners before because of how tactically flexible they are.
Pistols are nasty.
Yeah. I mean, I played literally the absolute best I possibly could. I realized that I could not hide, and if I'd have to move forward, if I move forward, I would throw everything at it. And so it's like, everything went really well for me. I played the best, and we are a big shooting phase that was supposed to really damage me. You didn't.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
that was the problem.
You have a lot of anti-tank for like a regular army, but I was all tank, and so you just did not have enough.
Yeah, well, I think the problem was it also wasn't super focused. So like I said, like if I had, okay, let me just take this side and then work my way around.
Yeah, there was also that. Yeah, you
could.
could.
Mobile enough. I could have easily just literally just jumped over here and just been like pew 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 pew, and then just ran out and whatever. I don't know.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I do like Harlequins. They only have 3 Sadeths, so there's light, there's twilight, and there's dark. So they're not probably as far as like even just the Eldar Codex as a whole. Like you have all the different craft worlds or whatever. Space Marines, you have a billion chapters and all this stuff. Like so, they're not the most interesting as far as like army composition goes, probably. Even Knights, you have all of the Forge worlds and the whatever, Imperial Knights. They only have like 5 models, but you have all these different Forge worlds and Warlord traits and this and that. So Harlequins are a little smaller in that aspect. So I think where you get your, like the biggest part of it is literally how you play them.
Yeah.
But I did like them. And so I think Harlequins are pretty cool. They have a lot of potential. Obviously, I don't think, unless you did a lot of digging on them, that you would get that on the first time you play them. But yeah, they were actually pretty interesting.
All right then. GG's. Good game. We'll see what we play next time. Bye.